Welcome to Treading the Veil, and to Samhain, the spiritual roots of Halloween. To understand the complexities of the modern Halloween, we must first go back to ancient Ireland, long before St. Patrick spread the faith of Christianity during the 5th century. Pre-Christian Ireland was a world steeped in myth, oral tradition, and strange ritual. Its spiritual leaders were the Druids, priests, judges, healers, astronomers, and poets. They alone preserved lore orally, taught in sacred groves, followed the movement of the sun and the moon, and oversaw religious rites and seasonal festivals. The Druids had a deep reverence for nature. They believed the sacred and the everyday were inseparable, and the land itself was alive with spirits, gods, ancestors, and elemental forces. Fueled with alcohol and ritual feasting, Samhain, meaning summer's end, was a 3-day fire festival to mark the end of summer and the beginning of winter, and also the sun's descent into the other world. Celebrated in pre-Christian Ireland, Britain, and France, between the 31st of October and November 1st, Samhain marked the Celtic New Year, a liminal time when the harvest was complete, cattle were brought in from summer pastures, and the future could be foretold. Without the protection of the sun, darkness, death, and decay prevailed, spreading across the land, highlighted by red toadstools and mushrooms rising from the darkness, growing along the ground and up trees, on both the living and the dead. At this time, the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead grew thin, and wandering spirits could cross the threshold to visit or to torment the living. For protection, great bonfires were lit across the land, a form of magic, a crackling prayer upon every hilltop, pushing back against the darkness of winter, while enticing the sun to return. Their flames a signal to both the living and the dead, guiding lost souls, while keeping darker forces at bay, such as the Aos, the fearsome fairy folk. To ward off these harmful spirits, people carved terrifying, grotesque faces into hollowed-out turnips, mangelwurzels, or other root vegetables, placing candles inside, acting as a spell, a form of protective magic, a guardian to be placed on thresholds, windowsills, or along roads as spiritual decoys meant to confuse or frighten the dead, or to guide the spirits back to the other world. There was also a belief that wandering souls might take up residence in hollowed vegetables. Druids would gather during Samhain to kindle a sacred fire using birch sticks. From this, every bonfire in the land was lit, and from them every home relit their hearth, which had been put out that night, an act to bond the families of the village together. In Scotland, during the night of Halloween, many Samhain customs have survived, including boys who travel from house to house, asking for wood for the bonfire. When the fire is lit, the boys take flames from the sacred fire back to their home and walk in every room, the smoke acting as a protection spell. When the bonfire burns down, the boys scatter the ashes on farmers' fields as a form of protection. Every harvest wasn't simply an agricultural task, but a sacred rite, a negotiation between the people and the powers of nature. The corn mother, or grain mother, harvest mother, is a fertility figure found across many Indo-European agrarian societies. She isn't limited to corn in the modern sense, maize, but refers to grain crops like wheat, barley, rye, or oats, what the English once broadly called corn. The corn mother is the embodiment of the grain itself, believed to live inside the crops, and die at harvest in her crone form. The last sheaf to be cut was often treated with reverence as the resting place of her spirit. She represented the mature, nurturing force of the land, tied to abundance, birth, and death. In many places, the last sheaf of grain was plaited into a corn dolly or harvest effigy, kept over winter to bless next year's crops. Sometimes this effigy was ritually burned, buried or returned to the soil during spring planting. A ritual, death, and rebirth. Within this spiritual landscape, scarecrows were more than crude guardians against birds. They became vessels for the spirit of the crop. As they stood watch over the ripening grain, some believed the scarecrow absorbed parts of its essence, embodying the soul of the field. When Samhain approached and the final sheaf was reaped, it marked the symbolic death of the land. The fields went fallow. The earth grew cold. It was at this liminal point, as the veil between the worlds thinned, that the scarecrow too was thought to lose its purpose and die or become haunted. In remote places, villagers would perform burning rites, heaping together the remains of straw men, old scarecrows and last sheaves, setting them alight on hilltops or in communal fires. This act was believed to release the trapped spirit of the harvest back to the earth or the other world. In some areas of Scotland and Ireland, folklore told of the Hollow Man, a figure made of the final cuttings of grain, dressed in old clothes, and set up near the hearth or in the barn. If not properly honored, burned, buried, or destroyed, it was said the Hollow Man would walk at night, seeking warmth, mischief, or revenge for being forgotten. Such customs likely have echoes in Wicker Man traditions, where human-shaped effigies, sometimes associated with animal and human sacrifice, were ceremonially burned. While there's scant direct evidence of human sacrifice in ancient Samhain rites, the symbolic idea remained potent. A ritual death to mark the year's end, embodied in the image of a burning straw figure, half human, half field. To ancient people, the thought of the sun disappearing and to never return was a terrifying thought. During Samhain, animal sacrifices were made to the gods for protection and to entice them to bring back the sun. Due to a lack of food throughout the winter, some animals were chosen to be culled, a necessary sacrifice so the others could live. Like the Anglo-Saxon Blotmonath, sacrifice month, cattle and livestock were ritually slaughtered, salted, and preserved for the harsh winter ahead. The chosen animal, often black sheep, would be sacrificed to the gods, their flesh eaten and their bones thrown onto the fires, hence the term bonfire. Like the Anglo-Saxon Yule, the souls of dead kin were believed to cross the threshold during Samhain and visit their loved ones. Feasts and alcoholic drinks were prepared, and an extra place was set at the table for dead relatives. Candles were lit and placed on doorsteps in order to help dead relatives find their way home in the dark. Seeing a spider during the 3 days of Samhain was believed to be a dead ancestor or friend come to visit. Much like Halloween, dressing up or guising played a large role in the Samhain fire festivals and involved people wearing animal masks to confuse any malevolent spirits that might be prowling the darkness. Hiding behind masks, the living moved through the night, unnoticed by those who sought to do them harm. In 16th century Scotland, and perhaps much earlier, young men dressed in white robes went house to house with blackened faces, possibly using soot from the sacred fires, reciting verses in exchange for food. As an ancestor to the later trick-or-treating, the ghosts would often threaten to do mischief if they weren't welcomed. The frightening costumes weren't in honor of evil spirits, but to hide from them, to blend in amongst them, to avoid harm. Samhain was also a time when games were played and rituals were performed in order to predict the future of those gathered, especially with regard to death and marriage. Apples and hazelnuts were often used in the rituals. In Irish mythology, apples were associated with the supernatural and immortality, while hazelnuts were associated with divine wisdom. One of the most common games that has survived into the modern age is apple bobbing. At its heart, Samhain was an ancient 3-day fire festival, infused with alcohol and feasting, marking the harvest, the end of summer, and the beginning of winter. a liminal time of wandering spirits and returning loved ones. It would later evolve into the modern Halloween, a patchwork of different cultures and religions, old world superstitions, and American commercialism. For more videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. Or order the book, The True Origins of Christmas and Halloween by R.G. West, available now on Amazon. Thank you for watching.